So you were, really at probably your lowest low.
I was at probably the lowest low of my life. And I'd been at a couple of lows in my life before that, but this was about as low as you can get. This was subterranean low. Anybody who's looking to have a big change in their life should understand that there are no big breakthroughs without big breakdowns.
Welcome to the CBIA BizCast, powered by Google. I'm Amanda Marlowe. Today, we are going to continue our conversation with the founder and CEO of Nuovo Pasta, Carl Zuanelli. Let's jump in. I want to dive in a little bit more about the people. Workforce is something that we continue to talk about. Like we mentioned before, your workforce has grown significantly. What do you think? What kind of people work for you? How have you been able to scale your business, finding the right people, especially you've got quite a lot of people working for you now?
There's quite a lot of people working for Nuovo at this point. There's no doubt about it. One of the initiatives that we have is a certification in a great place to work, which actually is a thing, right? To have a company which is designated as a great place to work. We're working towards that. I thought we had that just in the course of things that we do, but we're really looking for that certification. And as the company continues to grow, and as we change the way that we grow, we can't lose the aspect of the culture of the company and that the people are the most important. And because of how companies grow, including Nuovo, sometimes you lose sight of it and you have to refocus or do different things that put the employees into the forefront.
Do you have an example of something where you maybe tried to rush and then have learned from that?
35 years of examples, I have to say.
But one that, sticks out.
Yeah. There was a point where we were growing so fast that keeping up with the infrastructure of a manufacturing company, because we're constantly adding on, right? So we can produce more and bring on more customers. The actual facility itself couldn't keep up. And in one area, the temperature conditions started to rise. And what I mean by the temperature is the degrees in one of the forming rooms. And it wasn't comfortable for the employees. And I don't think we focused on it enough. Although we tried to fix the problem, we weren't successful. And I think there was an attitude within that unit that said, they don't care about us and the working conditions. And then we stopped in our tracks and we say, what are we going to do to make this an area that gives the employees comfort, to work in? This is a place where they have to spend most of their days, right? So we focused on it, we invested in it, and we listened, and we provided that particular production area what was needed to give a comfortable environment for the employees to work in. But there are many things like that, and in order to do that, there needs to be communication. So we have monthly communication sessions with people that have been designated, and we request them to join from different areas of the company that we sit down with on a monthly basis. We say, what do we need to do to improve?
And you knew people they're going to be open and honest, right?
Yeah, open and honest. Yeah. And they are open and they are honest.
Probably too honest.
No, not at all. These sometimes, again, depending on management's perspective from where they sit, they don't see it through the eyes of another perspective. And it's so important to get that perspective from your team, your company, the employees, so that you can continue to be a place that grows and be a great place to work.
When we talk about growing employees, growing a business, you're also kind of scaling up product lines as well. But quality has, I know you've mentioned it a number of times, has really been key in this. And you really haven't lost quality. In fact, you recently won, was it a Sophie Award?
So, we haven't lost quality. And I have something called continual improvement that we always try to employ. We did recently win a Sophie Award. The Sophie Award is given by the Specialty Food Association. And the Specialty Food Association is the singular association in the United States that honors food companies. And the award is basically the Academy Award of the food industry in the United States. And this year we won our 14th Sophie Award for a ravioli that's filled with a creamy mascarpone cheese and lemon zest.
And I have to say, I have tasted it. It's quite delicious.
Thank you. It is good. And again, if you recall earlier, I was saying, 1970 style product. Listen, there's nothing wrong with a great cheese manicotti. But as the industry continues to evolve, Nuovo, which means new in Italian, right? We're constantly evolving our flavor profiles, but Nuovo is also firmly rooted in tradition, right? So how a product is made, whether it be a cappelletti tortellini, which means a little hat tortellini, the way that it's folded and has been folded in Emilia-Romagna for centuries. We have an automated process that replicates that almost to a T, right? But in that area of the world of Italy, cappelletti is mostly served in a soup or a broth, which is a delicious thing to have. But that's not the way that our culture in the United States eats it. Right. So we've added some flavor profiles to the tortellini, whether it be prosciutto and provolone cheese or spinach-filled tortellini, or many, many other flavor profiles that we put into tortellini.
So that's kind of how you've put that innovative spin on it, right?
Yeah, that's the innovative spin. And the quality and the continual improvement. For example, when I was a young boy eating a lot of pasta, in my home in New Rochelle, we would sprinkle cheese on the pasta. And I didn't know the difference between Parmigiano Reggiano and Pecorino Romano until, I have to admit, I started working at Pasta Nostra. And those two cheeses couldn't be any different from one another. And the reason I bring that up is today, Nuovo's next journey is partnering with the consortiums in Italy, for example, the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium, where we're going to focus on using more Parmigiano Reggiano in our products, also using more Pecorino Romano, and becoming a little bit more true to the cheeses of Italy, because Nuovo is essentially an Italian meal solution company. So having said that...
So kind of bringing the roots back in.
Bringing the roots, but that doesn't mean...
Or not back in. They've never left completely.
The roots have never left, right? So, there's a great diaspora from Italy, right? And the people from Italy have really populated almost every point of the globe at this point. But they brought with them their foods, right? But the foods have evolved wherever they've traveled, right? And Italy itself is evolving. And so too does the root food of pasta evolve. There are classics, and you can never negate the classics, right? Like musical classics, but music evolves, and so too is pasta. When I talk about some of these consortiums, for example, and I mentioned that we make sauce, we make a great pesto sauce. And we import our basil from the Genoa area of Italy, which is called Liguria. Liguria is essentially the state or the region. And we are the second largest importer in the United States of Ligurian basil, and it's for the pesto that we make. And it's not that we don't grow great basil here in the United States. We do, but I have to tell you, it's a different variety.
And you mentioned kind of, things are evolving. Do you often spend time in Italy to travel, learn, and kind of bring that back here? Do some of your innovators do that? Tell me kind of that.
For the past 35 years, I've been going back and forth to Italy, and I'm there now on average about 4 times a year. Matter of fact, I'm leaving next Tuesday again. I was there maybe 6 weeks ago. And while there, yes, speaking of Parmigiano Reggiano, I've been to Parmigiano Reggiano. They call them dairies, but they're basically cheese making facilities, which it's beyond your wildest imagination what something like that would look like. It's like going into a Willy Wonka factory. To visit one of those is just magnificent. So yeah, visiting the ingredient facilities. We work closely with all of our equipment suppliers because all the equipment that we have that make pasta comes from Italy, as well as visit factories that are producing pasta. And we invite companies from Italy to visit ours too, and we share technology. So yeah, I'm there often, and then try to go once a year with the family on vacation as well.
Yes, much needed R&R.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, I know you mentioned starting in New York, your family moving to Connecticut, but you've chosen, to stay here in Connecticut. What do you think what makes Connecticut such a special place? And obviously it's hard at this point to pick up and move, but you could have.
Yeah, well, my family and I live in a very rural town. I would call it rural from, growing up in New Rochelle, New York, which is a couple of railroad stops from New York City. We've raised, my wife and I have raised our children in a town called Easton, Connecticut. And, I mentioned to my wife that, I didn't want to live in Fairfield. I like Connecticut. Didn't want to live in Fairfield, Connecticut. Nothing against Fairfield, Connecticut, but I wanted a different type of atmosphere. My wife and I lived in Manhattan, then we lived in Greenwich, and really enjoyed Greenwich. But we were looking for an environment to raise our children that would be a little bit different. And she suggested, my wife Karen suggested Easton, and Easton has a lot of horses and farms and very, very few businesses. And it was a great place for our kids to grow up riding motorcycles and playing in the woods and doing all that kind of stuff that, I didn't do when I was growing up. But for a business, it's interesting. I think Connecticut is in so many ways a great place to do business. Start with the workforce, as I said, which is the asset for any company, the most important asset. As some of when you talk about work ethic, it has some of the best work ethic I've seen out there. And I had the great opportunity to travel to every state early on in Nuovo's career while I was selling the pasta. And I constantly come back to this work ethic. And I think a lot of it is based on the old New England work ethic, but also the immigration that's taken place and how open Connecticut has been to a series of immigrants, whether it be in the 20th century, Irish coming in, or German, and later Portuguese and Italian, Asian, followed by South American, where we see a big influx from Brazil because of the Portuguese language, and then followed by the Cape Verdean. And now we're seeing a lot coming from the Middle East. And again, I came from immigrant family, and that work ethic that was there, I see very strong in Connecticut. I also see the government administrations really pushing for jobs in the state of Connecticut. So whether it be governor himself or some of the organizations that are, it's like CBIA, for example, or the CD. I'm trying to remember the acronym there.
The DECD.
DECD. I know Lindy Gold's going to, give me a big poke in the ribs for Nike.
There's a number of
There's
them.
a number of them.
Okay.
But they've all been really helpful. DECD in particular, but they've all been really, really helpful for our business. There's work to be done, and I'm leaning in on that. But I think they've been very positive in creating jobs. I think that there's work to be done for manufacturers and attracting more manufacturers, and how we can keep more manufacturers here in Connecticut. And I've been able to...
In terms of attracting talent or more manufacturing companies?
Well, I think we have, I didn't mention the fact that I think we've got great managerial talent simply because we're a bedroom community to New York City, right? So on the managerial side, we've got fantastic talent. But I'm not really talking about talent, but I'm talking about business incentives to open more factories in Connecticut. And, how can we incent businesses to do that, whether it be through incenting them to invest in equipment, to modernize their plants, or to be able to produce more efficiently? And what do those incentives look like? And we've had some really good discussions on where that can go.
And I want to go back to a point you mentioned at the beginning, but then right now too with people, and specifically you spoke about, coming from a family of immigrants. What role do you think? I know you sit on the board. Is that right, of the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants? Connecticut
Institute for Refugee and Immigrants, right, which is called CBIA, the acronym.
CBIA. And so tell me, why is that so important to you? What role do you think you as a business owner play in this?
Well,
this impact?
Immigration in the United States is a very hot topic. But I don't think it can be denied that the United States is a country of immigrants. I am a product of that immigration, like everyone is, but I'm a product that's very, very close to it, in as much as my grandfather brought all of his children to the United States. I saw that immigrant experience, and that immigrant experience is working hard, taking the jobs that others that have been here for a couple of other generations or additional generations may not want any longer, and then evolving, right, and becoming part of the management world, and then business owners and producers in the economy. So I've lived that, and I embrace it, and I'm very involved in it in terms of how we support CBIA.
Is that your way of giving back?
It's one of the ways I give back, I guess. I think I give back also by the programs that we have in place for our employees too. I mean, we have tuition reimbursement for some of our employees, which have come from immigrant families. Some of them have taken advantage of that. Many other things that we do, and the benefits, the additional benefits that we offer at Nuovo. So yeah, I'm both inside and outside of work in the professional life. I lean in hard on that.
Why do you think that's so important to lean in hard? Or in your experience, why have you seen that benefit?
Because I don't think we can pay back to the sacrifices that our families have made in terms of their immigrant journey. So if we can't pay back, we've got to pay forward. And that's why I think it's so important. Well,
in terms of looking back, we like to end all of our episodes taking a look back. Obviously, you've had an incredible journey, starting out, but now just seeing the growth of Nuovo Pasta. What's your advice for people who are maybe considering a career change or, starting something new?
I would say don't die with the song still inside of you. And don't let perceived failures get in the way of the outcome of your success. As a matter of fact, I truly believe that those, we'll call them failures, are just stepping stones to success, and they are experiences. You know, the word expert and experience have the same root, and it's not always positive experiences. So don't allow those setbacks that sometimes we call failures. And I say I don't use the term failure. I think failure can only be applied when one quits at something. Then it's a failure. They're setbacks. Someone said to me a while ago, and I think that anybody who's looking to have a big change in their life or to go out and pursue their dream, whether it be their own business or anything else, should understand that there are no big breakthroughs without big breakdowns. So when those big breakdowns occur, realize that you're on the right path. Just keep persistent.
You've always learned something from those
you have
breakdowns.
To always learn something from it, right? What is it? The pessimist sees problems in every opportunity, and the optimist sees opportunities in every problem, right? And when you really clearly look at things in that way, the fog of the scenario dissipates, and you could see clearly the path to the outcome that you want to have.
Is there anything that comes to mind for you, an example of a breakdown where you really had to pivot and grow?
Yeah. We have a breakdown du jour at Nuovo, but I will say something that was one that was a milestone for Nuovo and was a transitional period at Nuovo. Up until 2008, our business had evolved to about 75% of our business was serving chefs our product all over the country.
So these restaurateurs were your clients?
The chefs were our clients, and we would collaborate with the chefs developing product. About 25% of the business was retail, or what's called CPG, which was what the desire for the company was to be a consumer packaged good product, but we had evolved into what was called food service, or servicing the hospitality trade. We had products on cruise lines, and the product was served at the White House, not once, but many, many times. Our product was a particular ravioli, which was a pheasant cognac ravioli, was on the White House catering menu for their banquets. So when they would have state guests, the pheasant and cognac ravioli would be one of the items that would be served, and that was for multiple administrations. So fast forward from 1989 to 2008, and during that period, again, a lot of what we were doing was collaborating with chefs and supplying them. In 2008, there was another major financial crisis. And it was at that time when people stopped going out to eat at restaurants. If you remember, I'd said earlier, recession resistant, food was recession resistant, which is what I thought it was. And this was the first major recession. As a matter of fact, I think they called it the Great Recession. They still do. And our business in the first quarter of 2008 was down 30%. And that trajectory, that downward trajectory, looked like it was going to continue. Looks like we were going to be wiped out. Yeah. And listen, there were banks, right? They said only the strong will survive. And, Merrill Lynch, the company I just worked for, was being acquired by Bank of America, the government mandated that happen. And Lehman Brothers out, these are 100-year-old banks that were, so the strong, how was I going to survive this, right? And I come to realize later, the strong that do survive are those that are able to adapt. At one point, I had visited that uncle who had his own business that I was referring to. And he said to me, Carl, he said, you used to play a lot of sports. When was it that you didn't get knocked down, get up and get back into the game? He said, that's what you have to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I mean, I think there was some divine intervention, and a light bulb went off one day when I was making deliveries to a supermarket that was owned by the Cingari family. And one of the Cingaris was there. And I walked in and he said, "Carl, how's it going?" And I said, "How's it going?" "Not great." I said, "Our business is way off. People just aren't eating out as much." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I get it." I said, "Well, how are you doing?" And he said, "I'm doing great. And our supermarkets are just booming." And he said, "As a matter of fact, Carl, we can't keep the top tier steaks in stock. The fillets, New York strips, they're just flying off the shelf." And
People are spending money there.
People were spending money at home. And prior to 2008, people were building out kitchens in their home. I grew up in a home that had a very small kitchen. We had 8 people at our dining room table, at our kitchen table every night. And it was a very small
sitting
kitchen,
on top of each other.
Smaller than that. And we did just fine. And in the 2000s, they were called trophy kitchens at that time, which they're not referred to any longer. But granite and marble countertops and stainless appliances, et cetera. That was a new thing, but people weren't using it to cook. And simultaneously, by the way, there was the advent of the food shows on TV, right? Food Network and many, many others, right? And now people aren't going to restaurant, but they have these kitchens. They're being entertained by watching people cook, and now they're actually cooking. So we immediately changed gears. We had Costco at that time had been wanting to bring our product in, and I was avoiding it because I didn't think that we could keep up with their capacity. And I made a telephone call to the buyer at Costco. I said, "We're ready." And they brought us on.
So you were, really at probably your lowest low.
I was at probably the lowest low of my life. And I had been at a couple of lows in my life before that, but this was about as low as you can get. This was subterranean low. And, once again, an optimist sees an opportunity in every problem. And what was the opportunity here? And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I completely changed the way I was looking at it and saw this opportunity. And it was from there in 2008 where we've had meteoric growth. And today we have less than 1% of our product is in food service to chefs. Well over 99% is in CPG, and it's in every 50 states around the country. And it is that CPG product that I had written that business plan for so many years ago. And it was a great calamity that or a third rail on a railroad track that really got us back on the rails to be going in the direction that we are. And we continue to grow every year, double digits in our revenues. And we are now the second largest refrigerated pasta company in the country.
Right here in Connecticut.
Right here in Connecticut.
No, was there ever, I know I asked you at the beginning when you left Merrill Lynch, did you ever look back? Was there ever, when you were kind of going through this time, did you say, maybe we shouldn't have grown in the food services and maybe we should have just kept focused? Or did you just say, okay, I now see it, let's keep going?
That's a great question. I have to say, going off track into the food service world allowed us to make a restaurant quality product that we may not have been able to have done by just going into a consumer packaged good. So Nuovo's DNA is rooted in serving the finest chefs across the United States and learning from those chefs. And today, what differentiates our product from all other refrigerated pastas is that it's a restaurant quality meal that the consumer is going to have in their own home when they buy either a pasta or a sauce or a combination of the two in meal kits that we have now at a supermarket. And I think, once again, to answer the question directly, it's because we spent that time collaborating with chefs that we have the type of product that we have today. So everything happens for a reason.
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to end the episode. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you sharing your story and your wisdom with our audience. And thank you for listening to this week's BizCast. You can listen, like, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review and let us know if you have ideas for a future podcast. And for more episodes, head on over to CBIA.com.